I remember speaking in a previous audio about how we need to listen to the quick little voice that tells us not to do something. And there are two types of people and two types of reactions to this voice. First is the people who aren't spiritually enlightened and don't have that connection. When they hear that little voice, they probably ignore it or try to overanalyze it to the point where they just don't use it. And they wind up getting in danger. Some sort of misfortune comes along as a result of ignoring that voice. This is not something out of the blue, people. And have you noticed that whenever that little voice came along to tell you to do something or not to do something, it's totally unrelated to what you were doing at the time? Let me give you an example. Let's say that you're in traffic listening to music and you're just waiting for, you're listening to the music and you're really enjoying it. All of a sudden, out of the blue, in the middle of you listening to your music, you hear this voice that tells you, don't go to that party on Saturday. Don't go to the party on Saturday. Or don't go out on that date with Jason. Don't go out on that date with Jason. Now, that had nothing to do with you being in traffic. You just got off work. You're listening to your music on the way home. It has nothing to do with what's going on. Or you could be in the middle of a football game. You could be at a live football game. The game is going well. You got your beer. You got your hot dog. You're enjoying yourself. The game is really going well and everything, and you're really engrossed in the game, and all of a sudden you get this message that says, don't give that money to that girl. Don't give that money to her. That had nothing to do with you enjoying the football game, now did it? When you get random messages like this, people, it's not anything that's unusual. It's destined for you to hear it. It's something to make you think. And for a lot of people, they don't pay attention to it because they're so engrossed in what they're doing. Or if they do pay attention to it, they either misinterpret it as something evil, or they try to analyze why they shouldn't listen to that voice, and then they wind up in some kind of trouble as a result of it. Now, there's a second group of people. People like you and me who are on a spiritual journey trying to live our lives as peacefully and productively as possible and trying to give back from our experience as much as possible. We're trying to develop a closer relationship to our higher power. So when we receive these voices, not only do we receive these warnings, we also want to find out why. We want to find out who the players are, where it's located, and why tell me this now. We pay attention. So we go ahead and we listen. We don't loan the money to that girl, Lucy, or whoever it is. We don't go to the party. As a matter of fact, what we do is we go ahead and we contact the person who sent us the invitation, and we send our regards as to why we can't come to the party. And we don't go into detail as to why. We just say that something came up, which was true. Something did come up. Spirit told your ass not to go. And you may not fully understand why Spirit told you not to do it, but then you find out later on why. Now, I gave in a previous audio the example of, a person who didn't go to the party and they followed their instincts and they found out later on something went wrong and somebody had to go to the hospital. It could have been an injury. They could have had an attack of some kind. It could have been an accident. It could have been a fight. It could have been an altercation. It could have been anything, and they wind up going to the hospital. See, that could have been you laying on that stretcher going to the hospital if you didn't listen. Or let's say that you gave that money to Lucy because Lucy gave you the sob story about how she needed to have her rent paid and everything, and then you find out later on that Lucy is living with somebody else and who's living on the government, and they really don't need rent money. What Lucy wanted was drug money. You found that out later on because a couple of days after the fact, of the days that you didn't give her the money, she overdosed. So she got the money from somebody. That would have been your money going in Lucy's veins. Okay? So when you find out these things later on, yeah, you're up in your feelings about it and everything. But then, after the fact, you think about it and you're like, man, I'm glad I listened to that little voice. That little voice ain't so little. So what we need to do is when we first hear those little voices, before we start to analyze why we shouldn't listen to it, maybe we should analyze why we should listen to it. Let's go back to the party situation. Okay? Where was the party? Was it somewhere that you would normally be? If so, who was at the party? Do you know these people? Are you associated with these people? If you are, do you have good and productive relationships with them? If you do, then that's a different story. But in most cases, Spirit wouldn't warn you not to go to the party if it was a favorable situation. Wouldn't have told you anything. Look at the players on the field. You're invited to do something that you normally don't do, that you're normally not comfortable with doing because of the people that are involved. That's a clear sign right there. And what happens is a lot of us, we're in that mode now when we get a little older and we get enlightened and we have some kind of spiritual material resources to give back to somebody. We get in such a giving mode sometimes that we take leave of our senses in regard to common sense, and we don't pay attention to the fact that we could be walking into something very detrimental. You have to be careful where you spread your seeds. Okay? Because if the ground is hard and parched, those seeds are not going to grow. So just because you're feeling that you need to give back, sometimes you got to be careful who you're giving it to. Now, if they choose to receive it on their own, that's fine. But you can't be associated with people, places, and things that you know that are bad for you in your former life. What makes you think all of a sudden they're going to be good for you in your new life? If they were bad for you then, unless they've met with some type of spiritual enlightenment and they're walking different, what makes you think they're not going to be bad for you now? You know, this all boils back to leveling up. And for a lot of you who haven't listened to my videos about leveling up, go back and check them out. There are quite a few of them. And one of them involves letting go of old ties. You don't go to places where you know the energy is off in regards to you. If it's not welcoming and those parties that are there are not interested in you and care about you, then don't be in their company. Don't be a party to fakery all the time. Because eventually you're going to wind up acting and behaving just like them. And we're going to have to start this spiritual process all over again. And some of you ain't going to make it. So listen to that little voice. That little voice that tells you, don't do X, Y, Z. That little voice that tells you, don't go here, don't do that. Pay attention to the signs. And before you decide to go somewhere or do something, and before you try to analyze why you should do it, look at where you're going. Look at the people involved. If they don't fit in your current reality, then you don't need to be there. Okay? This is where you have to feed people with a long-handled spoon. You might still care about them and everything, but you don't have to be a pivotal part of their existence as far as like trying to support them. You can't support them right now because they're not in a good headspace. You can't support them the way they want you to support them. Let me correct that. Because you can provide advice and spiritual support, but you don't have to open your wallet just to show that you support them. Because you don't know where that stuff is going. Remember, this is your bounty that was given to you by your Creator, so you have to be very careful where you take your resources to and who you share your resources with, because these are resources that were given to you by your Creator. So be careful how you re-gift those resources. With that being said, I'm going to let you guys go. Peace.